Hello, let me continue with my lectures on colloidal state. In my last lecture, I talked about the stability of colloids, how addition of electrolytes destabilize the colloids, and the results are summarized in Schulze-Hardy rule. Protective action of colloids, how a lyophilic colloid is able to impart stability to lyophilic colloids, and quantitatively how it can be expressed in terms of gold number. In today's lecture, I will discuss about emulsions, how they can be classified, what is an emulsifier, macroemulsions, in which we will be looking at oil in water and water in oil emulsions, methods of preparation briefly, and then discuss something about gel, how they can be classified, some properties like imbibition, syneresis, and thixotropy. And finally, I will summarize what we have discussed today. Let me start with emulsions. What is an emulsion? Emulsion is a colloidal system in which both phases are liquids. Now, if we mix two liquids that are miscible, a single phase results, and therefore, it will not be a colloidal system. The two liquids that form an emulsion have to be immiscible in each other, like oil and water. An emulsion is a significantly stable suspension of a liquid of certain size in another immiscible liquid. When we say stable, it is a relative term. Stability can vary from a few minutes to a few hours or even years, depending on the intended use of the material. Let us look at the classification of emulsions. We can classify emulsions into three broad types. First, the microemulsion. It is an opaque colloidal dispersion with particle size greater than 400 nanometers, and hence the particles can be seen easily under an ordinary microscope. Then we have microemulsion, which is a transparent colloidal dispersion with the particle size less than 100 nanometers. And the third one is a mini emulsion, a blue-white colloidal dispersion with particle size between 100 nanometers to 400 nanometers. For a suspension of one liquid in another liquid to be stable, a third component must be added. We can look at it. We have done experiments in chemistry lab. When you mix two immiscible liquids like chloroform and water in small amounts and stir it, the mixture becomes hazy, and after some time it separates into two layers, and therefore, although we have dispersed chloroform in water, it is not a stable composition, and therefore, whenever we try to bring about a colloidal dispersion in the form of an emulsion, it is necessary for us to add a stabilizer, or the stabilizer in this case is called an emulsifying agent or emulsifier. What is an emulsifying agent? A surface active agent like soaps and detergents, or even finely divided solids like bentonite, magnesium trisilicate, magnesium hydroxide, and even aluminum hydroxide. Macroemulsions can be classified into two types. One, oil in water, abbreviated as O/W. Oil is the discontinuous phase, that is the inner phase, and water forms the continuous phase, that is the outer phase. The other one is water in oil, W/O. Water is the discontinuous phase forming the inner phase, and oil is the continuous phase, thus it is the outer phase. When we use the term oil here, it is any liquid that is immiscible with water. That means the term oil is used irrespective of the nature of the liquid that we are adding to water. Why do we add an emulsifier? When emulsifiers are added, they form a protective film around the oil droplets dispersed in water. This prevents them from coming closer together. That means if the two oil droplets come closer together, they merge into one and larger droplets are formed. And emulsifier prevents that. In other words, an emulsifier will stabilize the emulsion. We can take the example of soap. We know the structure of soap molecules. These molecules have a long hydrocarbon chain and maybe a polar head group. Like when we put it in water, they will ionize like RCOO minus Na plus if it is a sodium salt of a fatty acid. The chains which are hydrophobic in nature will get into the oil droplet, and the polar groups will be directed outwards. In other words, we can imagine a micellar structure in which the oil has got into the core of the micelle, and entire droplet is now covered with the polar head groups of the soap that is added. This decreases the interfacial tension between oil and water, and the emulsion gets stabilized. The type of emulsion formed depends on various factors. What does it mean? When we mix oil and water, whether we get oil in water emulsion or water in oil emulsion, primarily it depends on the nature of the emulsifier. It also depends on the process used in preparing the emulsion, and it also depends on the relative amounts of oil and water that is present. There is an empirical rule called Bancroft rule. Oil and water emulsions are produced by emulsifying agents that are more soluble in water, and water in oil emulsions are produced by emulsifying agents that are more soluble in oil. For a particular emulsifying agent at a given concentration and under given set of conditions, one type of emulsion will be inherently more stable than the other, which means one of the two, oil in water or water in oil emulsion, will be more stable than the other. But it is possible to convert one type of emulsion into the other, and this is called the inversion of emulsion. Let us look at the distinguishing features of oil in water and water in oil emulsions. A macromolecular emulsion can be diluted with more of the outer phase. What is an outer phase? Outer phase is the one that is continuous phase. Oil in water emulsions show electrical conductivity because it is lot of water there. It's a continuous phase, therefore it will show electrical conductivity. In the case of water in oil emulsions, if we add oil soluble dyes, it will become colored. Relative refractive indices enable us to distinguish the two under a microscope. Either they will be bright or dark depending on the experiment that we carry out. A drop of an oil in water emulsion produces a wide wet area on a filter paper. If we put a drop on the filter paper, you can see the added drop spreading. Because of water that is present, you will see the wet portion there. What are the factors determining stability of emulsions? 1. The physical nature of the interfacial film, how good it is. 2. Existence of an electric barrier or a steric barrier which prevents the droplets from coalescing. Viscosity of the continuous phase. Imagine if the continuous phase is highly viscous, the movement of the droplets is not facilitated. size distribution of the droplets, phase volume ratio, and temperature of course influences all the other properties, and therefore these are the factors which determine the stability of the emulsions, temperature being the leading factor. Inversions of macroemulsions depends on relative solubility of the emulsifier in the two phases. It also depends on change in relative amounts of the two phases and temperature. How do we prepare emulsions? Let us look at briefly the methods that are employed. Emulsions are usually prepared by vigorously mixing the two liquids by using either a high speed mixing machine or by using ultrasonic vibrations. So, what you have to do is lot of agitation is required in order to bring the two immiscible liquids into emulsion form. It is necessary to add a suitable emulsifier in order to make the two get into the state that we desire. Some of the important emulsifying agents that are used, as I mentioned some of them: soaps, detergents, proteins, gums, and agar. Among these, soaps and detergents are most commonly used emulsifiers. Gels, another interesting class of colloidal dispersions. We are familiar with what gel means. In the morning when we get up, the toothpaste that we use, it is written on that gel. It is in the form of a gel, the jelly that we see. So, a gel is a colloidal system in which the dispersed phase, that is the discontinuous phase, is a liquid and the dispersion medium is a solid. The word gel is derived from Latin word gelu, which means freezing, cold, ice, or gelum, which means frozen, immobile. You can relate the gel with the terms that are given here to describe the material. It is a solid jelly-like material that can have properties which can range from soft and weak to hard and tough, but gel is a solid but wobbly material. Now, let us look at classification of gels. The gels can be classified on the basis of their behavior into two types. How we distinguish the two types? The two types are distinguished mainly by the behavior on dehydration and rehydration. Gel contains lot of liquid, say water. How do we dehydrate it? And rehydration process if we do. The two types will differ in their behavior. Elastic gels, of which gelatin is a typical example. Gelatin easily forms a lyophilic sol when warmed with water, which on cooling sets into a gel. And if this gel is dehydrated partially, an elastic solid is formed, and this elastic solid can be reconverted into gelatin sol. That means the process that we carried out here is reversible. On the other hand, we have non-elastic gel like silicic acid or silica gel. It is an example of this type of gel. It is prepared by mixing solutions of sodium silicate and hydrochloric acid of suitable concentration. The entire system sets into a gel. We also have examples like gelatinous precipitates of oxyhydroxides of metals like aluminum, chromium, tin, etc. They are related to non-elastic gels, but with their difference. They are not true gels since they do not include the whole of water that is present in the sol. A non-elastic gel like silica gel on drying becomes glassy and crumbles to a powder. A sol cannot be obtained by adding water to the dry material. That means it is irreversible. An interesting property is exhibited by these gels, which is called imbibition. Though a gel contains the whole of the liquid present in the sol, it is able to further imbibe a considerable volume of the liquid in which it is placed. This leads to swelling of the gel, and this phenomenon is called imbibition. The swelling of the gel is influenced by electrolytes. If swelling is considerable, the gel disperses into a sol. The gel can also be dispersed into the dispersion medium by warming, and the temperature at which this happens depends on the type of ions present in the system. The extent of swelling also depends on the pH and is minimum at the isoelectric point. Another interesting property shown by the gel is syneresis. Gels undergo shrinkage in volume when allowed to stand. This phenomenon is called syneresis. Application of external pressure increases syneresis. For amphoteric proteins, maximum syneresis is observed at isoelectric point, since the molecules then have equal number of opposite charges, and this favors the shrinkage of the molecular framework of the gel. Syneresis decreases as the pH of the medium is decreased, because the molecular chains acquire a charge of same sign. The chains unfold and repel each other. Since there is no net volume change as a result of syneresis, it is not the reverse of imbibition. Imbibition is taking up of liquid. Syneresis is the loss of liquid. Although the processes are in opposite direction, but syneresis and imbibition cannot be taken as the reverse of each other. Thixotropy is another interesting property exhibited by gels. What do you mean by thixotropy? Change by touch. On agitation, the gel becomes a fluid, but it can be reversed to get back into the gel form when left alone. Fresh gelatin gels are quite thixotropic. That means if we shake it, it will become a fluid, liquid. We can take advantage of this fact in adding ingredients to the jelly that we are preparing. There is an example of isothermal reversible conversion of sol into a gel. When a ferric oxide sol is heated with a small quantity of electrolyte, which is insufficient to promote coagulation, a gel with a pasty consistency results. And when this gel is mechanically shaken, it liquefies but sets into gel again on standing. A similar behavior has been observed with a number of colloidal systems like alumina, zirconium dioxide, etc. Let me summarize what we discussed today. We started with emulsions, a form of colloidal dispersion in which both phases are liquids, how to classify emulsions, emulsifier and its role, and macroemulsions of the type oil in water and water in oil, and then the methods of preparation. Then we discussed about gels, how they can be classified, the interesting properties of imbibition, syneresis and thixotropy exhibited by gels. In my next lecture, I will be discussing about the applications and importance of colloidal dispersions. So far we have discussed various types of colloidal systems, and at one go we can try to find out how and why colloidal dispersions are important and interesting. Thank you.